during those times when I am acting as caregiver, my self-care takes a back seat. And I do tend to be maybe even hyper-focused on maintaining my caregiving role.
Welcome to the 10th episode of the CHD podcast, Congenital Heart Conversation. I'm Annie Alchak, a congenital heart patient born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome and 38 years post-Fontan. CHD stands for Congenital Heart Condition, a term proposed by Lisa Morton and Tracy Levicki to replace CHD. We've adopted it for our podcast, where it also means Congenital Heart Conversations. I'm joined by my co-host from Scotland.
Hi, I am Ayrton Beatty and I am bereaved of my brother Edward, who died 25 years ago of an undiagnosed congenital heart defect, and I have drug-induced long QT syndrome.
We also have two co-producers today. Anna Jaworski, a heart mom to an adult with a single ventricle heart. And her co-producer is Guy Simkay, who was born with de-transposition of the great vessels and double outlet right ventricle, and he's post-heart transplant. They'll be back later in this episode to talk with Ayrton and me and what we've learned from the panel.
Today's episode deals with caring for the caregivers of adults with congenital heart defect. There has been a lot of discussion about care of children or adults with congenital heart defect, but what about the people who do the caring? Today, we're going to talk to some caregivers about self-care and why it's important for us to discuss caring for the caregivers.
Roseanne Franco is the mother to David, Vincent, Roseanne, Philip, and Andrew. David was born with a congenital heart defect in 1966, and he passed away in 2020. David lived a very full life, was married, had a daughter, was an amazing musician, and a strong advocate for the CHD community. In his last days, he moved back in with his mother. David was also a volunteer with Hearts Unite the Globe and a co-host of Heart to Heart with Nicole and David. This is Roseanne Franco's first appearance on the CHC podcast, Congenital Heart Conversation. Welcome to the program, Roseanne.
Thank you. Mark DeRoo has just celebrated his 25th wedding anniversary with his wife Michelle. Our loyal listeners may remember Michelle from the episode we did recently about adults with no or only one open heart surgery. Mark humorously talked about being Michelle's caretaker, only in the capacity of carrying her bead bags or helping Michelle to conserve energy spoons during the days requiring higher energy than normal. Mark, like our other two panelists, has learned a great deal about congenital heart defect and has always been a staunch supporter and advocate for Michelle. In his intake form, he shared that Michelle is doing better than ever today, thanks to advancements in medicine. Welcome to the CHD podcast, Congenital Heart Conversations, Mark.
Very happy to be here.
Roseanne, self-care was not something talked about when you were raising David. What self-care pattern or activity has been the most transformative in your journey as a heart parent, and how did it positively impact both you and David?
When David was diagnosed as an infant, they didn't even have its full diagnosis, but he had to be on meds. I had 3 other children before him, and they were in school or at home, and we did well. Back in those days, there was no support system from hospitals or even after catheterizations. As a mother, I had great faith and a lot of praying, was a great believer, but you do these things on a wing and a prayer because they have to be done. There were friends who helped, and not family, except my immediate family, but my husband had to go to work, and the children had to go to school, and life had to go on. And we followed all the rules we were supposed to with David. His first open heart surgery was when he was 5. I had to take him to the University of Alabama. And thanks be to God, through our local parish, they got someone to come in, because in the meantime, I had my fifth child, Philip. And he was 10 months old, and I had to take David to Alabama. And my husband had to work, and the other children had to go to school. So they got a caregiver to take care of Philip during the day while everybody was away. And I was down in Alabama for 6 weeks. There was no support there whatsoever except the people on the floor. I got to meet other heart patients or family of other heart patients. That was supportive down there because there was no family, nothing else. Brand new friend. And then when we came home, we had to make changes. We tried for him to be as normal as possible, but there was no support, not even from the hospitals. I had a good pediatrician, so I could talk to him, but no, there wasn't support at all. And I'm so glad it has improved. You do what you have to do, and prayer work. It really does. Sometimes we don't like the answer, but we do get answered.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Growing up in the Catholic faith, I know how much it can mean to a lot of people who are a part of it.
Mark, as a husband, what self-care practice or activity has been most transformative in your journey as a caregiver, and how has it positively impacted both you and Michelle?
I'd have to say reading. I've always enjoyed comfort in a good book. And originally, when I would escort Michelle to the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, I felt it was my job to try to entertain her as best I could and try to keep her mind off things. We actually stumbled upon the fact that maybe it would be a good alternative to start our own private little book club. So we would go to our favorite bookstore in the whole world that is sadly no longer there, just off the mall at the Mayo Clinic. We stumbled upon a book that we both wanted to read. So we said, what the heck? We both bought a copy. We all know that waiting in the lobby for a test sometimes can take a long time. Usually we like to buy something with a little comedy involved. You'll see us sitting side by side chuckling. It's just always been a great way to keep your mind off things. And it's been a great help.
That's pretty amazing. I never thought of doing something like that when I'm with someone, a completely different subject that allows you to not only take your mind off of what's actually going on around you.
Yeah, with our little book club, of course, we'd have conversations about the book. And even though we've been married for 25 years, we will learn a little bit more about one another based on our interpretation of whatever it is we're reading. So it's been very helpful for us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Not only do you get the entertainment with this book, but you also get that extra closeness and building a strong bond so that when you do have tougher times, you have those moments to remember. Thank you so much, Mark.
Roseanne, your son David lived independently for years before moving back in with you near the end of his life. How did caring for him as an adult differ from your experience when he was a child?
It was entirely different because as a child, I had to take care of him, right? And then his well-being, and he always had a difficulty with food, only because certain days he liked or didn't like. I learned how to give him the potassium as an infant when the liquid form. I had to tighten his lip so it will go down and not spit up, and the digitalis and all that. But after a while, you get to be fairly good. And remember, as a parent, I was in charge. He wasn't in charge until we got a little bit older. I think he lived his normal life that we could make it. And yet there was always worry because different times he would run fevers and they'd want to hospitalize him to put him on antibiotics. And he hated hospitals. We did the best we could. And he lived a fairly normal life. He was only with me a few months before he died. And he was a grown man, had a wife, and had a daughter. When he came here, he never wanted anyone to fuss over him. So I tried not to. and it wouldn't let me really take care of him. I couldn't care for him because he was a grown man and he was independent. All I could do was make him as comfortable as possible. And he was just so delighted that Douglas, the dog, and I got along. And I did, because that was his lifeline there.
Yeah.
David loved me enough that I know he didn't want to die in my house. He was afraid I'd come home sometime and find him dead. My prayer was to be with him after he was dying, so I could pray with him. But that wasn't to be. I was just so happy. And he got to see some of his siblings who were still in the state at the time. I am grateful that I had him for that time.
It must have been because I know when I go to visit my mom, she's always cooking and trying to care for me, even though she's of an advanced age and she's got health business herself. And I'm trying to tell her to calm down, and she's the one who should be resting.
I know. It's difficult to stop being a parent, even to a grown child. I knew I couldn't go too far with David because he would just turn me off. After having 5 children with various difficulties, I finally learned to back off. I didn't want to, but I had to with David because I didn't want to cause any more distress.
It must have been because
Mark, what's the most crucial aspect of caring for Michelle as an adult? And how do you prioritize self-care alongside your caregiving responsibilities?
I'd have to say communication, and I mean that in all its forms. As caregiver, I find myself needing to listen most of the time just to keep informed with Michelle's treatment and learning about her physically and mentally, and being able to communicate it in those times that Michelle is unable to for whatever reason. Very important to pay attention to the doctors, question the doctors at those times when perhaps I know a little bit more than they do if they're new to Michelle's care team. There's been times where Michelle and I both have had to speak up and question the doctor's treatment methods. It becomes very important. In nonverbal communication, picking up Michelle's cues during some stressful times, whether physically or mentally, has also become very important, and something I wasn't all that great at in the beginning of our relationship. But definitely communication is very important. As far as prioritizing my self-care, during those times when I am acting as caregiver, my self-care takes a back seat. And I do tend to be maybe even hyper-focused on maintaining my caregiving role. And fortunately, I'm married to a wonderful person who understands the importance of my care as well. So she'll encourage me to take a few minutes, go for a walk, grab a beer. She takes care of me quite a bit too. We exchange those roles from time to time.
So the caregiving is mutual all around. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I have to say, the relationship is the kind of relationship we CHD patients hope to find with someone who is willing to learn, who will question the doctors, because there are times we can't do it ourselves. Sorry.
Right.
It's just so beautiful.
Thank
And then
you.
also growing and knowing that in the beginning, you admitted it wasn't perfect, but you learned. And that's
Yeah.
truly all we want with another person. Sorry. It's
Not
someone
at
who's
all.
willing to communicate, willing to listen, and willing to learn. And I'm glad that she looks at your care too. I'm glad that you two both see the priority that's necessary for both your mental and physical well-being.
Thank you.
Mark, can you share a moment when you felt truly supported by your community? How did that experience shape your perspective of caregiver support?
Michelle and I have always been very fortunate to have a very nice group of close friends that understand, that have also learned about Michelle and her physiology. But as far as the adult congenital community, Michelle and I went to an event. She had always been participating in the Adult Congenital Heart Association, whether serving on the board or communicating with colleagues. But the first time I really saw that for myself. We went to an event in downtown Chicago. It's probably about 15 years ago already. But before that, because I hadn't been part of that community, it almost seemed like Michelle and I were on this island because her condition was so rare. And I didn't really understand that there were more people like Michelle out there until we met them. It was a fundraising dinner. We just had a wonderful night, and Michelle's cardiologist was there being honored. It was an awe-inspiring experience seeing other people like Michelle. Part of the conversation throughout the evening was all about caring for the caregivers. And at one point, we even had a round of applause for the people that took care. And I'm saying that with air quotes because, as we mentioned before, both Michelle and I switched the roles from time to time of caregiver. I think that was the most memorable event for me as far as feeling part of the community. And this group, of course, is included in that, the support and encouragement and a time that you all give is wonderful.
Thank you. So lovely of you to say the CHD community that we're part of and you're part of. It is quite amazing when you actually get to meet other CHDers and talk with them too, to realize that you're really not alone. One of the best reasons why I love this podcast is we get out there so that others can meet each other virtually at least and know that there's others out there just like them with a similar diagnosis or similar struggles. And that's beautiful, giving an applause for the caregivers because they deserve that beyond belief. That's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sadly, family-centered care was not the concept in the 1960s that it is today. Roseanne, can you tell us the time when you felt supported by your community, and how did that experience shape your perspective of caregiver support?
The only community support that I have ever experienced has been from my intimate family and friends. We have moved around quite a bit. I was never connected directly except giving donations to ACHD or to ANIT group. The support that David got from Hannah was always self-deprecating, but he encouraged them when he was working with her at the studio. I never went to any conferences except for individual doctors because of David's frequency to the same one. We'd become friends. They were always impressed with David, and David paid attention to them, and some of the nursing staff on different places. They were the support for my immediate family and friends. I was listening to Mark, and I think it was wonderful listening to him. They were both adults, and then we got to meet people who had the same heart situation as his wife, so then they could communicate. I did not feel any community support yet from my local parish, but the support was mainly if you needed something, but we didn't really. Fortunately, we were always able to have good insurance and things went along, and at that time it was easy for me to drive into the Bronx if I had to, the Montefiore Hospital, or when we had to go to Alabama, of course, we flew. I had met friends there, kept up friendship for years. Some of those people have died off and I'm still here. And now David's gone. Now there's more outreach from the hospital community when people have had heart surgery and they follow up either with home care. It's very different now and very helpful for people and for families. We did not experience that because it just wasn't available at the time. And then when David was an adult, he moved away. He had great support from a cognitive therapist out in Texas, Roseanne Curtis. He just loved her to death, and she did him. She did a great deal for his mental stability and psychology. We were fortunate.
I can understand that. And you're right, it is a lot different from when you first began this journey back in the 1960s than what we now have in 2024. So being able to get that support that you needed to help support your son, whether he was an infant, a child, or an adult, it was very different and very minimal.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that the support you did receive with his doctors, his nursing staff, and the therapist were there to help you as well as him, so that you felt that there was a different form of community that could help you guys through situations, through the questions, and any worries or issues that David did allow you to understand and know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I want to thank the panelists for sharing, and when we come back, it will be time for patrons and volunteers to ask questions or share their experiences with us.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
You are listening to the CHC podcast. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@thechcpodcast.com. That's anna@thechcpodcast.com. Now, back to the CHC podcast.
Welcome back. We're talking about caring for the caregiver in today's episode of the CHC podcast. And now our audience is able to share their experiences or ask questions of our panelists. Looks like our producer, Anna Jaworski, has a question.
I have a question for you, Mom Franco. It is so hard on parents to lose children. And even though David was in his 50s and was not supposed to make it out of childhood, so he was a miracle for all of us, it's still hard to lose a child. It doesn't really matter how old they are. I'm wondering if you have felt any kind of support from the CHD community or from your church community or from your family since David has passed.
In the beginning, when David died, it was the beginning of the pandemic, and God bless the Catholic Church. The Archbishop here closed everything down, so it was difficult to find a church to have a funeral mass. And if there was one thing I knew I wanted and David wanted was a funeral mass. Annie, I think you're the one from Boston, and you came down with a few people. I think you were called the Zipper Girls, if I'm not mistaken.
The Zipper Sisters, yes.
Since I wasn't very hospitable to you, it was a difficult time.
Of course, we understand.
But I was so grateful for that. And of course, my friend Monsignor he took a chance and he did that funeral mass and he had the brief wait. So that was a blessing. And yet, Franny and family, but a lot of them couldn't come because of the pandemic. My son Vincent had just had serious surgery. He was down in Florida and he couldn't fly. Yes, there was support. It's thankfully from my family friend and true ally. And I do believe that the prayers were answered in the way they were supposed to be. And although I miss David, I know now he is not suffering because I do believe, and I have been told it by other people, he was a courageous and a wonderful human being. And there was something very special about him. God may have given him a crazy heart, but the crazy heart was very loving and a good brain, and he cared for other people. I know that we're doing so well and he's happy, and I can't wait to see him again. Thank you.
It meant a lot to me that I was able to be there with you on that day. And there were so many members of the heart community that told me they wanted to be there too. So that's the first time I ever Facebooked a funeral. But I was really thankful that Vincent and Jenny, David's sister-in-law, and other people who couldn't be with us that day they got to see it live because I was doing, the poor people had to hear me singing the songs and they've heard me crying, but it didn't matter because it was a way that we could all be there together during the pandemic. It was a really scary time for everybody. I was really glad that I could be there and that we could really, as a community, grieve together. I'm thankful you let me be there, Mom. Yeah, I was going to say the same. Even in the end, David still managed to find a way to bring the community to you, Roseanne, and to the rest of us with his big, strong, gentle heart. Yeah. I still feel him. I still feel his presence with the podcast that we're working on. And he made a lasting impression.
He did on many people. His legacy is good. Be strong in it. Just be kind and loving to yourself and everyone else.
And he wanted us to take care of you, Mom. So I'm glad that you're still part of the community, even though we don't have David with us anymore.
Yeah. And I'm grateful to be part of it. And now, Annie, thank you. Really, you did for David. And thank you for allowing me into your wonderful community. For whatever reason, if I can help someone, and I would like to, but I'm not good on Facebook. That's the problem. Just send me an email and ask me for free. I'm good at that.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. That's beautiful.
I hope it'll be a comfort to you to know that when I talked to David before he went to Connecticut to be with you, he told me that one of his fondest memories during a difficult time when he was in the hospital after he had his stroke was that he knew that you were in a chair right there beside him and that you were saying the rosary for him.
And I'm still saying the rosary for him and for everybody else, including you people. Believe me, I am.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for Roseanne? Hi, this is Michelle DeRoo, and I have a question for Roseanne. Hi. I think we've been on calls before. My question to you is, as a parent, how can we patients, children patients, make you feel included in what we're going through? I understand, much like you said about your son, that we try to not be a burden on our parents. And we try very hard, Roseanne, to include you without burdening you. What can we kids with adult congenital heart disease do to better communicate with our parents?
Communication is the key. And I realize it's difficult for children and with parents. I think we need to talk more about the condition with the child. The younger, the better. And even if they don't fully understand or know how to communicate, it's start the process, because that way you will not feel it as a burden as the child, because you're freer to talk to your parent about how you're feeling physically and psychologically. You're scared to death. You don't understand. And there's a lot of big people working on your body, and you don't even understand your body. Just little questions, no pressure. And the child should feel free as a child to say, I am so scared, and I don't know what's going on with this, and I feel terrible today. I hurt. Whether I hurt because I'm scared, or I hurt because my body is telling me to be hurt. It gives the child the opportunity to tell that to a parent. It's not burdening a parent, because the parent has to be educated too. And listen, you can't do anything about it except take them to the doctor. But at least you understand the child, and you're not in a mystery. Boys is difficult. They don't communicate well at all. But girl, you're better. Boy, I terrible to tell you if something hurts, whether they're scared. And that I think you do a good job on. That's my advice as a child, to be free enough to talk to the parent and just be honest with them and honest with the doctor. And if you don't like what they answer, ask somebody else.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Roseanne. This is inspiring.
Good. How old are you now?
I am 55 this year.
So you're a long way from the childhood phase. Yeah. And is it your child or what are you?
Oh, it's me. Sometimes I struggle communicating with my mother because it's hard to tell your parent that your body isn't working really well today. And I worry about hurting my mother's feelings and saying things, but it sounds like from your point of view, you'd rather hear it than not.
Absolutely. If you told me that, I know it would hurt me, and the first thing I would want to do is want to take care of it. I'm in charge here. But it's better to hear it and even be frustrated that you can't do anything. But then maybe you can talk about it. Wow, I can say to you, I don't understand how you feel. I think it's a dirty trick. Let's talk about it. Or maybe pray together. Or maybe let's just listen to some nice music together and try to get that feeling to go away. Well, let me give you a great big hug.
I like the great big hug idea. That sounds fantastic.
There's nothing like it. And I wish you well.
Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you.
I'm with you on that, Miss Avocado. I'm having to undergo some more cardiac testing, and I haven't told my mum yet because I'm terrified of making her even more worried about me than what she already is.
It's hard to share your fear with your parents because it feels like a negative to share that with them sometimes. But hearing Roseanne, it sounds like you'd rather hear it than not.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
heart mom,
Yeah.
I can concur. I agree with Roseanne. I would rather know, even though I can't fix it, at least, like Roseanne said, we can hold you up in prayer. I can light a candle for you and let you know that there is somebody out there who loves you and who will be thinking about you and sending healing thoughts your way. Sometimes that's all we can do is just give it up to God. But at least we're there with you in spirit if you share with us. And if you don't, we're left in the dark. And I think it's harder to be left in the dark than it is to confront the fear together. Because when you confront the fear together, you have a chance to divide that fear.
Well, Dad, Hannah,
Sounds like I need to have a conversation with my mum when I see her next week.
I think it sounds like a good idea. Moms are stronger than you think they are. Remember that.
I love that. And if nobody else has any questions for Roseanne, I think we're going to let her go because, honey, you have been amazing today. And I'm sure you need a little rest now.
Yes, I do. And you're grateful me that I get the use of my right hand, my dominant hand, and my wrist, and my arm back with therapy, which will start this week, because leading with my left hand pretty dangerous, and it's very embarrassing.
Oh my gosh. I would my brain to be left here. Okay, Mom. I'll be lifting you up in prayer, my loves. Thank you so much for coming today.
Roseanne, thank you so much for joining us today and coming onto the podcast. We really appreciated having you here.
I hope I added something good to this, and I appreciate your asking me, and I'm glad I could do it. God bless all of you. Bye-bye.
Does anyone have any questions for Mark? I see our producer, guys, MK has his hand up.
Hey, Garrington. Mark, what have you learned the most from being the caregiver for your wife?
What have I learned most? It's always a learning experience. I always think back to my first trip to Mayo. Michelle did her best to try to prepare me for what I was about to experience, but it's just not possible. I was just awestruck by the reality of what I was experiencing at the Mayo Clinic for the first time. And that was before Michelle and I were married. One of the things that truly amazed me was Michelle's cardiologist, who had been Michelle's cardiologist for a number of years before I met her. Actually, I'm pretty sure I had to meet with her approval before Michelle could agree to marry me, actually. We used to joke about that a little bit. But I was amazed that she took the time as a beginner to really sit me down, and she drew a little sketch of Michelle's heart and drew another sketch of my heart, basically. And this is what the structure of the heart and the lungs and which is what they're supposed to be. And these are Michelle's. And although I got the gist of it, I was really thankful for that experience. She was an awesome woman. She retired recently. So yes, it's always been a learning experience. I know life is a learning experience, and unquestionably, I know much more since I've had the privilege of being Michelle's spouse these past 25 years. And that I'm completely humbled by sitting here and talking about the fact that I've been with Michelle for 25 years and being part of her journey. And we've had some good male visits, and we've had some not so good male visits. And the not so good male visits have been a number of years in the past for us. She's doing great. I think one of the things I've definitely learned to never give up hope. One of the hardest trips for us was when it was determined for her to go on the transplant list. She was struggling, and she was sort of starting to show signs of decline. But it was important for us to just hold on to one another and be each other's support. And she's doing great. I've definitely learned not to give up hope.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. You're a wonderful caregiver and also husband to someone who has needed it and continues to know.
Well, thank you.
I see that we have Frank Jaworski, who's also raising his hand. He is a patron of the CHD podcast. Frank, would you like to ask your question?
Mark, I'm not sure if this is a question or just a comment, but I'm in the position of being both a caregiver for my daughter and a caregiver for one of her caregivers, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that what you say is true about doing things that are normal to distract yourself a little bit. For us, it's little things like my wife and I are very competitive when we like games. So whenever we sit and have a meal together, we'll sit and play backgammon or cribbage or gin or something like that. And just a simple thing like that and distract yourself with that, with the fun of that competition is good. And also big things like making plans for the future. And the ability to do that gives a normalcy, I think. And it seems like you and Michelle have a good handle on that.
Yeah, I think we play off of one another in that respect. We love to play cards too, Frank. We'll get together for some cards sometime. But Michelle is much more competitive than I am. Because she's doing so much better, she's actually getting pretty good at golf. So she will be beating me in golf pretty soon. That's going to be a tough pill for me to swallow, but I'm very proud of her and what she's been able to do with her golf swing over the past couple of years.
I'm sure she has a good teacher in you.
No, actually, she has a coach, and her first session, her coach said, okay, anything your husband taught you about how to play golf, you have to start doing immediately. And so because of me, she would have beat me a couple of years ago. I was not her first golf instructor. So
That's very cool.
thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark, I have a quick question for you. Being a CHD patient, I know when I get scared or in pain, sometimes my reaction to that may not always be the nicest to the person around me. Are there things that have helped you as the caregiver understand when maybe that might be happening between you and Michelle? And did you learn code words? Did you learn how to better navigate it? Or did you learn a way of understanding that might just be something that happens from time to time or once in a blue moon?
Yeah, and it is actually from time to time. To be honest with you, I can't really think of a specific time where I felt like Michelle was lashing out in that respect. But we have tried code words. We have tried a few things here and there. One of the things I still struggle with, and I probably always will, I don't really have a true grasp of Michelle's tolerance for pain, which is extraordinarily high, much more so than my own. I'm certain of it. So it takes a little bit to make Michelle do that. She's had a couple of tests at Mayo that she struggles with and begs and prays and hopes and prays that she doesn't have to do it every time we go to Mayo. And she hasn't had to do it in a while. But one of them, the most recent, was an electroshock treatment for her facial paralysis that she's been struggling with, going on 2 years already. Wow. And yeah, that one she has a hard time with and gets pretty frustrated and just wants to internalize and keep to herself, which is unlike Michelle. But let Michelle be the director. And if she needs her space and vocalizes that she needs some space, I'm there to give her some space when she needs that. And recognize other times as well when she just wants somebody's shoulder to put a head on.
In the end, I think that's what people don't realize, or at least our caregivers or those who have to be our caregivers for the moment, whether they're family, friends, loved ones, partners, is that sometimes maybe it's not words we need, but that physical touch, whether it be holding your hand or giving you a hug, or even just that knowing glance to understand that I may not be in your shoes, but I'm going to be
Absolutely.
here for you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and perhaps that is what could help a patient realize that they're not alone going through it, in the sense they have that person there who can help them vocalize, help them talk to someone else when something else is needed. So it's just so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I wish we were in person because I would give you such a big hug. And I do hope that others who are listening who have partners in the CHD world can understand that we know it's not easy for you guys to go through this. And we do the best that we can as patients, whether it's holding it in, verbalizing it, or other ways that we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie. Yeah, we'll get together for hugs.
Thank you. Now, if nobody else has any other questions, we are going to move on to the next segment.
I have one quick question and one comment.
Okay.
This is Mark DeRoo, and I just want to say I'm the luckiest gal on the planet for marrying this man. One of the key phrases that we have when I need support is I need to be in his bubble. We call that bubble time. So that's just to answer your question, Annie. If I need a little extra time or if I need him to be close to me because I'm afraid, I just tell him I need to be in his bubble.
Oh my God.
Sometimes I say, Mark, you're exit bubble.
What I'm hoping our cook is definitely one of those. Yes, I'm using air quotes when I say helping.
Thank you for mentioning that, because it gives us a glimpse into the world when things do work right for people who are able to communicate. And it teaches the rest of us how we can communicate better so that we can get the better care and experience we need in our lives. Thank you.
We would like to thank Mark DeRoo for joining us today on this episode of the CHD podcast, Congenital Heart Conversation.
Thank you all. It was wonderful to be here with you all. I was very excited to get the invite. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.
The CHC Congenital Heart Conversations podcast is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe, or HUG, and is part of the HUG Podcast Network. HUG is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to enrich the lives of our community members. For free CHD resources, please visit our website at congenitalheartdefects.com.
Welcome back. Now it's time for Annie Olchek and I to talk about this episode with our co-producers, Anna Diorsky and Guy Kimtek.
What did you think about the show? We'll start with Anna.
Thank you. I was so impressed with the kindness that was shown. Of course, we hand selected our guests, so we knew what we were in for, but I was really surprised with some of the answers. And I loved the part about being in each other's bubble. I think that was my favorite part of the show. But I think the problem is that, at least for Roseanne, there isn't the kind of support for the caregivers that there needs to be. There wasn't in the past. And I also feel that it's hard for the CHD community to continue to provide support after the loved one has passed. But I want to give us some kudos, because I really feel that we have been there for Roseanne Franco as much as we're able. And I do think she feels loved by us, even though David is no longer with us.
I have to agree there. It is tough because you almost get forgotten when something like that happens and you become a bereaved person versus a parent of or a sibling of. And what the show has shown me too with you, Anna, is that we need to figure out ways on how to continue the community with those who go through what Roseanne has gone through.
I tell you what, Annie, it has meant the world to me to know you and Ayrton and Guy and Nicole. I love my daughter, and she has always been an inspiration to me. But meeting all of you too has just made my life still even more full and more blessed than ever before. So I appreciate the fact that I have all of you in my life. And as a caregiver, you all know I feel like I'm everybody's heartwarming. I can't help it. I take you all into my heart, but it really means a lot to me when you share. And even if you're scared, or even if things aren't going perfectly, for you to let me know so that I can pray for you and just so that I can be there as much as you'll let me, it really does mean a lot.
Thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Anna. Guy, what did you think?
I found the show very inspiring because of the Roseanne story. It touched me in a way it never been touched because she's gone through the ups and downs. That was incredible. Going bars well.
Yeah, David really has gone through a lot of ups and downs, and people could understand that. And he still managed to create a Facebook group called CHD Athletes, help create a movie for advocating awareness on CHD called Silent Cries, Breaking Through CHD Awareness. And I believe he was a producer on there. He's done a lot. And then Mark as well, like you just said, Guy, all the different things that he's talked about too.
Ayrton, you're up. For me, it was hearing Roseanne talk about David, and it just reminded me a lot of my mum and Edward, especially sitting there and saying the rosary for him. My mum still does that a lot for Edward, and it just made me really emotional, especially with it being Edward's anniversary on the 30th of September. And David just sounds like he was really amazing guy. I wish I could have met him.
I'd like to add what David did was very humbling. Like he didn't know it. His mom living it over and over again.
David died exactly the way he wanted to, because he told me his greatest fear in going to Connecticut to be with his mother was that he did not want his mother to walk into the room and he had passed, or for her to witness him die. So for him to die at the dog park with his buddy Douglas, God knew exactly what to do. That he had made friends with some other dog walkers, and they were there for him at the end. That really was a blessing. I know it's hard for Roseanne because she wants to be there to pray with David, but David's desire was not to have his mother watch him pass.
What surprised you the most? Guy, would you like to answer first?
Mark's first trip going to the Mayo because I'm an invention, almost all my life. I know how that feels being with her. It's a remarkable place.
I think what surprised me the most, believe it or not, was Michelle's question to Mom Franco. I really was not expecting anyone to ask a mother how the child could help. It's very humbling as a parent to think that your children may worry about how their condition might affect you. And I was really touched by her question and by Roseanne's response.
I was actually relieved that Michelle asked that question because, like I said, I'm already scared to discuss my heart issues with my mum because of what she went through with my mum. Because the thing I want is her worrying about me even more than what she already is. And I just don't want to put any of my health worries on her when she's got so many of her own to deal with.
That's such a beautiful sentiment that I think if you said that to her, but Mom, I want you to be in the loop. And I just want you to know I have an appointment and I'll let you know when it's over. I think it would mean so much to her. I know it would have told me that she doesn't want to burden me, but she just wants to keep me in the loop. That would mean a lot to me because then I could light a candle and I could pray for her, or I could offer to be there for her if she wanted me to be there. So I think as parents, especially as parents of adults with conditions, it's really hard because you want to have that adult relationship with your child, but they're always going to be your baby. So you're always going to worry about them no matter what. And it really means a lot when your child will let you in their bubble. I love that. I love that expressions. Now I'm going to think about being in people's bubbles.
I personally think youth is approach everything. And even if you're scared,
That was really good, Guy. I agree.
How do you think this episode might impact or help caregivers in the CHD community? Anna, would you mind going first?
No, I think that's a really good question, Annie, because this is really not something that we talk about much. In the last few years, there are more articles about family-centered care, and there have been more discussions about how to care for the caregiver. I was shocked when Mark said at the ACHA conference that they actually applauded all of the caregivers and recognized them then, because the one in Chicago, that was the very first ACHA conference, if I'm not mistaken. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go to that one. But that was a long time ago. It really was about 15 years ago or so. And for them to have recognized the role of the caretaker and how important that role is, and that those people need to be cared for, I think that's good. I don't think we're talking about it enough yet. I still don't feel that all of the caregivers who are out there really are getting the care that they need. And I think we're seeing more of a mental health crisis with caregivers for children of all kinds of special needs, not just congenital heart defects, but really all different kinds of health needs. I'm glad that we're having this conversation on this podcast because it needs to be talked about. It is not going to improve if we don't talk about it. So I think we've made a good step forward.
Yes, I have to agree there. Guy, do you have a response to the question?
I think it will help the caregiver and the recipient very well because they get to see both sides of the conversation.
Ayrton, do you have a response to the question?
I think just by having the conversation, anything that can help bring more awareness to how much thought that the caregivers need is important because they are the ones that get overlooked when it comes to the support needed by the patient.
I have to agree there. And I really hope that this episode can get out to a lot of other listeners, also in the medical community, to understand that the caregivers do need a lot so that they can be there for the patients who are just trying to live each day or moment by moment or test by test, and helping them make things, if not easier, at least more manageable. The necessary need for mental health for both sides, the patient and the caregiver, is immense. And as doctors and medical teams and hospitals are seeing this, they are starting to provide more free care or care that's more affordable or other ways. And hopefully, as the time continues and these babies become teenagers and adults and older adults, they can also become more vocal to explain that if I'm able to move forward, then so does my caregiver need that help to move forward too.
Hey, Annie, I love that you said that. And there's an organization called the Ollie Hinkle Heart Foundation. And
I just found out about them. Yeah.
they are doing just that. In fact, in October, they're having a free conference, and it's for the parents, it's for the ACHDers, it's for anyone connected to the CHD community. And they've had some webinars. That foundation is doing a lot to help all members of the CHD community. And they do offer to pay for counseling for parents or siblings or adults with congenital heart defects. I can't remember how many sessions, but they do offer to pay for you to have free counseling if you need it. And all you have to do is write to them. So everyone should check out the Ollie Hinkle Heart Foundation. We know the ACHA organization, the Adult Congenital Heart Association, has been wonderful for decades now for providing support for adults with congenital heart defects. They do some for the caregiver as well, but the Ollie Hinkle Heart Foundation has just been amazing.
We should add their link to this podcast as well then.
Yes, we definitely will.
Thank you for joining us today on the CHD podcast. We hope you join us next month for our episode on dealing with late diagnosed adults with CHD. Until then, I'm American BC.
And I'm Annie Altchak. Have a great day, and please leave a review of our podcast wherever you listen to this. It helps others find us and anticipate what we're all about. We appreciate you helping us to keep those congenital heart conversations going.
Thank you for joining us. The CHC podcast can be heard monthly wherever you get your podcasts. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram to continue the conversations. Join the Hearts Unite the Globe Patreon group and become part of our town hall meetings. It's simple. Just visit www.heartsunitetheglobe.org and select the tab that says Donate to Hug with Patreon. Then you too can be part of the conversation.